We've got our guest speaker today, Dr. Wes Patton, and Wes is a retired professor at Chico State, actually had to deal with me at one point in time, and still does. And but I've invited Wes not just for his experience as a professor here at Chico State, but his experience in the sheep industry, literally a lifetime in the sheep industry, as well as serving the industry and understanding that role of serving our industries that we need to, that I think is something we don't know about anymore. In terms of serving our communities, it used to be such a more predominant role, but I think in these current generations, it's not something that's as prevalent. And I want to just have Wes visit a little bit about the importance of serving whatever industry you wind up in. And so I did send Wes some questions. They're very in-depth, thought-provoking questions. But I'm pretty confident that the Doc, as we called him, Doc Patton, would really enjoy questions from you guys as we go throughout. So if you have questions about any aspects of the industry or involvement or just experiences, please go ahead and throw them in the chat. And I'm going to kind of be monitoring the chat as we go and recording some of those questions, and I'll try to get those asked. And if I miss something, just unmute and yell at me, okay? That is totally acceptable. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And so, Wes, my first question for you was, tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in the sheep industry.
Okay. Actually, I was born into the sheep industry. My parents had a diversified ranch in Humboldt County near the little town of Alder Point, which is about 60 miles west of Red Bluff. And we had sheep, cattle, hogs, chickens, turkeys, and a huge garden. So we were kind of a subsistence living kind of family at that time. And my dad worked for a larger ranch as we went along there. My first ownership of sheep started when I was 5 because my dad had gone off to help mark lambs at another big ranch. And as they turned the sheep out after all of that process, some of the ewes went off and left their lambs. And consequently, my dad came home with 5 lambs for me, and I was in the sheep business up to my ears because I had to feed the little buggers because they were weaned too early. And they were Romneys. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with that breed, but they are a coarse wool sheep that adapted well to the coastal region of California. By the time I got in high school, I was shearing sheep to make some money. And I also had a flock of Corriedales that I had for their wool and their meat. When I got to graduate school, I actually had Hampshire sheep. And at about the same time, I met my wife, Jane, and she had Hampshire sheep. And so we purchased a Hampshire ram together before we were married. And my gosh, look what happened after that. When I got to Chico State as a professor then, I was in charge of the sheep unit for about 33 years out of the 35 I was there. And at that point, we had Rommeldale sheep, we had Polypay sheep, we created Chico Pay sheep, and we had a donation of 100 head of Silverdales, which is a cross between Suffolk and Texel. In addition to that, we had over 20 sheep of different breeds that were for display purposes, and we went around to the county and state fairs and showed these sheep and had a history of each of the breeds to share with the people that came by to take a look. And so that was pretty rewarding to actually get involved in that way because of the people we got to meet and the fact that we were able to educate people on the various kinds of sheep there were. At the same time, my wife Jane and I always had a ranch on the side, and consequently I could go to the classroom every day with a real life experience. Some days it was a real bad experience, some days it was a real good experience, but nonetheless it was a real experience each time. During that time, we had a variety of different kinds of sheep too. We still had our Hampshires. My wife got very involved in Dorsets, and she served on the Continental Dorset breed board of directors for several years. We had Suffolks, we had Barbados, we had Rambouillets, we had Katahdins, we had White Dorpers and Dorpers, and that's what we have now. And so we've had a lot of experience with a lot of different kinds of sheep.
A quick question.
Yeah.
Is there a breed of sheep you have not owned or been involved with? Maybe that should have been on my list.
It's kind of interesting because way back when, we went to England, and we went to the national show in England, the Royal Show, and they had 29 breeds of sheep on exhibit there, and we didn't know 25 of them. That was that different when we went there. So if you get a chance to get away from home, you need to do that and see what else is out there, because there are a lot of different things there. And you've probably told them, or will, that there are well over 200 breeds of sheep, and each of them have their own purpose in life. So yeah, we've seen a lot of breeds of sheep. We've dealt with a lot of breeds of sheep, and that's kind of fun. We've also been involved in the various breed associations, and I got an opportunity to serve on the National Dorper Board a few years ago. As I mentioned, Jane got to serve on the Continental Dorset Club Board, and we've been involved very deeply recently, recently over the last 30 years, I guess, with the California Wool Growers Association. And for those students that may not know the history of the California Wool Growers Association, it started in 1860. In 1860, what was the biggest thing that sheep produced in California? Thus the name, wool growers. They were producing lots of wool. And where was wool manufacturing taking place? In Boston. And you couldn't throw a sack of wool on your truck and drive to Boston in 1860. You would get scalped along the way. Consequently, they gathered in San Francisco, and they rented a ship to send the California wool clip around the Horn to Boston. And that's how the California Wool Growers Association got started. And the association has been in business since 1860. And just this year, we had the 100th California Ram Sale. 100 years of that event. Started in 1920. And so it's been around a long time, and I became very involved in the wool growers, served on the board, and I currently am co-chair of the California Ram Sale. On the national level, I got involved as well, because the folks at California Wool Growers nominated me for a position on the American Lamb Board. The American Lamb Board is an organization that takes your checkoff dollars, and I don't know how many of you have sold lambs and got your check, and there was like $1 taken off of your check for promotion. And that's what the American Lamb Board does. It promotes American lamb. And it's really an uphill battle, because they ended up generating about $2 million a year from checkoff dollars, compared to $40 million a year that the beef people have to work with. And I don't know how much the pork and poultry have, but a lot. So consequently, the American Lamb Board has a really hard job to do, and they do it with a staff of 3 people in Denver, Colorado. And they have a board of 13 members, which I was a member of, and they represent the various levels of production in sheep industry. The level that I represented was the seed stocking portion of the industry. They have feedlot representatives, they have processing representatives, they have small flock representatives, they have large flock representatives, and these people serve for a period of 3 years, and they can be renominated for another 3 years. And they do all of the promotion for American lamb in the nation. When it comes right down to it, each of you gets about $7 per person spent on you to promote soft drinks. I don't know whether you knew that or not. We were able to spend 3 cents per person on you to get you to eat lamb. So you can see it was a struggle. It was a tough job that had to be done. Now, there are other organizations involved in the sheep industry in the nation. The American Sheep Industry Association, ASI, is the one that does all of the political aspects for the sheep industry. There's also the National Lamb Feeders Association, and there are several other organizations that are linked with those that you can actually find out about on the American Lamb Board's website. And that's really, it's called American Lamb Services. What's it called, Celine? I've forgotten already.
I can't remember, but I'm going to post the links on our class page. And just another fun fact, several of you have done your sheep safety and quality assurance training, level 1. That is the American sheep industry, the ASI. And so I require that for this class. So we will have all level 1 certified students that take this class.
Okay, it's called lambresourcecenter.com. And if you go on that, then you can link to all of the other groups off of that site. And you can also get a lot of stuff that if you are going to be putting on a sheep event, the American Lamb Board will provide you with lots of things that you can use for that purpose.
We get
Everything
a lot
from
of that
recipes.
stuff. Yeah, we use a lot of that for our sheep and goat day and anything that we've had. And if you're going to be, several of you are thinking about being ag teachers. Oh yeah, you can get free cuts of meat pictures, recipes, a lot of stuff that you could use in your classrooms as well. Sorry, had to throw that in.
No, I think that's important. And about the time I got on the board in 2012, we were having a lot of trouble selling lamb. And the California Wool Growers Association sent a letter to ASI and said, hey, we need to have a summit. We need to have some kind of a gathering to discuss why we're having this difficulty and see if we can make some corrections in our industry. And the American sheep industry said, no, that's not our deal. That sounds like the American Lamb Board's deal because we're talking about marketing lamb. And so they sent it over to the Lamb Board. And from that was created the Lamb Industry Roadmap Project. And that was really interesting because rather than me telling Selena what she's doing wrong, and she's telling Julia what she's doing wrong, and so forth, back and forth, we hired an independent, unbiased third party to do an evaluation of the American sheep industry. And that was really fascinating. We actually ended up hiring the Hale Group out of Boston. And they gave us a really good guy that led us through this process. And he said when we started this, hey, I will only do this if you agree to a couple of things. And one of them was, I'm not going to do this for you. I'm going to help you do it for yourself. And in addition to that, once we figure out what's going wrong, you're going to fix it. I'm not going to fix it. And so enough people agreed that they would do that. And so that started. And that went on for a long period of time. And actually remnants of that are still going on. And they had a summit again last summer to follow up on some of that. It was a SWOT analysis of the American Sheep Industry Association. Outlined the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats to the industry. And then how are we going to fix those? And some of the things that came out of that, for example, we do a audit of the industry every third year now. And that says, okay, this is what you said you were going to do in the next 3 years, and this is what you have done to accomplish those goals. One of the things that came out of that, and I'm really thrilled about this, is the fact that we got instrument grading or camera grading into the American sheep industry. And now if you get to go to Superior Farms in Dixon or to their plant in Denver, Colorado, you will see the camera grading system in place. When we first started this, the land board put up money to do studies about this process. And they found at that time that the graders, the USDA graders that were working in the plant in Greeley, Colorado, where we did this, agreed with each other 57% of the times. So if one of them graded this lamb prime, another one might grade it good. And they only agreed 57% of the time. They agreed with the machine 52% of the time. And the machine agreed with the machine 98% of the time. Consequently, over a long period of time, we were able to get this implemented into the sheep industry here in the country. And at this point, there's only 2 of those machines that are working, because the third one that we helped finance, actually that company is in bankruptcy right now, and that's the Mountain States Rosen Company. And hopefully that will come out of that okay, and that machine will still be used. But anyway, those are some of the things that went on during that period of time. And it was a really quick, really careful look at the things that we had that we could do better. And then we went about implementing those things and actually ran that committee for a couple of years before I retired from that board. So there's not a very quick, but a bit of involvement that I've had in the sheep industry.
Well, and just the vast experience was, I always learn something when visiting with you on just the diversity of activities and involvement that both you and Jane have had in the sheep industry. You think about the breed diversity, and I still like the fact that you now raise Dorpers and you started out shearing sheep, and with wool breeds, and you've gone full force to Dorpers where you don't have to shear them.
We were a little embarrassed a few years ago because we were still judging wool shows, and we were Dorper breeders, and everybody thought that was kind of odd. But yeah, but you made a point, Selena, early on here that I think was really critical, and that is the fact that if you're going to get involved in an industry, you need to be involved in the industry and help in any way you can. And that's what we have done. And it's really rewarding for us to know that we've been involved, and hopefully along the way that we've provided some help.
Well, and that's where we started last spring, right before COVID. We finally got the Chico Sheep Association up and going. And I got to get with Miranda, but the plan is to keep going with that. And so if any students are interested in getting involved in the sheep industry, with COVID parameters, we've been doing webinars and learning about the industry, but the goal is to actually get out and promote the industry as well. And dues for that will actually go to our local chapter, and then also students will be members of California Wool Growers as well. So that is one of the things, is to mimic and learn how to serve an industry and get out and promote a product. And I think that is the something that I know that I strive to do better at, and something I think our students, that most of you guys want to be involved somewhere, somehow. And I want to just capture that and focus it on some of our industries that we do have. And I think the Chico Sheep Association, I'm going to promote that in this class for sure. And we have Young Cattlemen's Association, there's a range club, and a lot of different groups that are designed to help students learn how to serve an industry. And I think Wes and Jane, if you meet Jane, they both exemplify serving an industry and really being a part of it. And I think that's pretty awesome and not something we see as much nowadays with some of the younger generations. So I want to figure out how to instill that passion in y'all that are some pictures, some names, but how do you guys jump in and get involved? Many of you want to go on to be vets. How do you get involved with the veterinary associations and your industries? Some want to be ag teachers, get involved with CATA. Wes has experience with that group as well as his son Matt is. What's his official title now?
I think he's the director of the California Ag Teachers Association.
That's, yeah. And so heavily involved. So they're still serving in a lot of ways. Anybody got any questions on just the background or where we're at? How's everybody doing? I see still smiles and semi-awake. Excellent. The second question I had for Wes, and I think he was kind of leading into that, is for young people that may be interested in an industry, what does the future hold, do you think, for the sheep industry?
You know, this is an interesting question, and I think it's a good one, and I'm happy to give you my thoughts on this because I am really enthusiastic about the sheep industry, particularly here in California. Let's look at this from a consumer standpoint, first of all. There are three classes of consumers, and I've kind of made these up. These are not official by any means. And the first one certainly is not official, but it is very real. And those are the people, the lamb consumers, that are chronologically challenged. Did you see my hair color? Did everybody see that? Okay. Chronologically challenged. That means old people. And they consume lamb. Some of them do. But if you're 20 years old, you don't want to base your future on 80-year-olds. That isn't very productive. I'll just give you that idea, okay? So then you need to look at who is the potential consumer of your product. Okay, the millennials and the Gen Z and Gen Alpha and whoever is to follow are adventurous eaters. And instead of eating a meal, it can become an event. And the American Lab Board actually invested a tremendous amount of money, your money, in this idea a few years ago because we got involved with supper clubs. Have you ever heard of a supper club? A supper club is kind of like a book club, except it's about food. And a lot of young people are involved with these. And so they can go online and they can get all the ingredients for a dinner. And the American Lamb Board pumped in enough money that they made lamb as the center of the plate for some of these groups, okay? And like in book clubs, you study a little bit before you go to dinner, and some of you prepare each of the various parts of dinner, and then you have fun while you're eating it, and you probably have to wash it down with something, and wine is really a good thing to wash it down with. And afterward, you are full and happy, and you discuss what you just did. And that is one of the things that is really a benefit to the American sheep industry, because more young people are adventurous eaters and they're looking for these kinds of things to do and to invite their friends to. And consequently, there's been an uptick in the consumption of lamb from 2014 through today because of that kind of adventurous eating. And so that is one group that the American Lamb Board has really targeted. And how do they do that? One of the things you'll notice is that we don't have ads on Super Bowl Sunday because we can't afford that. What did I tell you? We have about $2 million a year to advertise lamb. And it costs you about $2 million for 30 seconds on Super Bowl Sunday. So that's not going to get it, is it? So what we have found is that there are cooking shows. And if you can tie in with a chef that likes lamb and get him to promote it on his cooking show, you have covered a lot of people by doing that. And so that's one of the things that's being done. And I think it's been very effective. And the blogs are really good. And if we can convince a blog leader, is that what you call yourself, Selena? I don't know what you call a blog leader.
A blogger.
A blogger.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know.
I'm a podcaster.
Okay. Yeah. You and Shane. Okay. So anyway, that is one of the groups that is really being targeted as far as the potential uptick in consumption of lamb in this country. The other thing is that in California, we have a minority majority in our state of people. I cannot name an ethnicity that doesn't like lamb. I think that this is one of the biggest opportunities that we have, and it's a proven fact that over 50% of the lamb consumed in the nation is consumed by ethnic groups. I had an opportunity to go to Detroit a few years ago with the American Lamb Board, and Detroit is the hub of the Muslim population in our state or in our country. They consume about 5,000 lambs a week in Detroit. Okay? If you think about that compared to the total number of lambs that we harvest every week, which is about 30,000, that's pretty significant in one town. Well, it's not exactly a town, but it's a population center at least. So there's opportunity. And if you look up and down the state of California, we have a plentiful opportunity to sell lamb to. So I think that is a really important thing. And the East Coast is the same. Up and down the East Coast, the consumption of lamb is much higher than it is in the middle of the country. And that's certainly true as far as California goes.
That enthusiasm just amazes me in terms of, for somebody that's been involved their entire lifetime and to still have that passion. And I agree wholeheartedly with the diversity that we have in California and the mild climate to raise lambs and not have to deal with blizzards and such things. We have a few other things, but there's a tremendous opportunity.
Definitely so. Definitely so. And, I think there's another really important one that should be at the top of your mind right now, and that is fire prevention with grazing animals. I know, well, I could name about 5 or 6 groups of people that I know right now that have very, very good systems of prescribed grazing here in California. Each of them has between 3,000 and 5,000 head of sheep or sheep and goats that they use for this purpose. And they are doing a tremendous job as far as reducing fuel load in the areas that they're allowed to go to. I have a lady that I sell sheep to down in the hills around San Diego. And with all of the fires that have been going on in Southern California, she's safe because she has sheep that have eaten down all of the undergrowth on her property, and it has provided safety for her. I don't know how many of you remember when we had the fires and they saved the Ronald Reagan Library because they had grazed with goats around it. And the people that do this grazing find out that goats and sheep together actually do a better job than either alone. And this is a tremendous opportunity here in the state, I think, for that.
I remember last year, did anybody drive by Bidwell Park and see the goats grazing in Bidwell Park? How many of you guys, a thumbs up or something? Okay, and
I remember.
Did you see that, like, you could literally see how tall a goat could stand, and that was the area that was stripped down, but that got all of that undergrowth, and I think I've got some pictures that I'll probably show throughout the semester of those goats grazing, but they are fantastic. And then sheep are really good on the grass side and getting and managing that undergrowth. But the Ronald Reagan Library, I'm glad you brought that up. That was fascinating to see. You could literally see the line the animals had grazed around that library, and the fire went right up to it.
Right. The vice president of the California Wool Growers is a young woman that has a grazing company. Andre Soares is her name. She headquarters out of Los Banos, but she grazes all around the urban areas and has done a tremendous job. And I know her because she likes my kind of sheep. And we find that the different breeds of sheep actually work differently in their grazing habits. And the breed that I have, the Dorpers, the white Dorpers, actually are somewhat between a goat and a sheep as far as their grazing habits are concerned. So they kind of go into a place and they'll eat all the weeds before they actually get to the good stuff. And they will also do a lot of browsing on the trees and the brush that's there too, like a goat would do. And so there are some ways of doing this that really work to the benefit of everyone concerned while being friendlier to the environment. And this is one of the things. So if you're looking for a way of getting in the sheep business and you can't afford to buy a $2 million ranch to put them on, don't worry about that. Get involved with one of these grazers. Get involved with one of them, learn the system, and then you can do it because you're not having to own much land, if any, because you're on somebody else's property all of the time. Now, there are some disadvantages to this. One of them is that you have to be able to interface with the public because you're in the public eye when you're doing this kind of work. And one of the guys that we talked to said, you know, I spend a lot of my money on signage. I put signs up saying what we're doing so that people don't come along and get the wrong idea. And they have to be willing to talk with people as they come by, and they have to talk with people before they actually get there in order to set the stage so this turns out to be a positive thing. But this is not going to go away because of the management that we've had of our forests and whatnot in California for the last 50 years. You're now seeing what's happening. Someone said the other day, all of these fires is correcting the mistakes that have been made in management over the last 50 years. Well, that's a hard way to do it. We could do it a lot better if we could do it by grazing livestock.
Yeah, because fire is the natural cleanser of any grass forest ecosystem. And without the cleansing, that's one of the big challenges. And so grazing management. And interesting, Wes, we had a question about some breeds, a breed-based question on personality. And we had some students, it's funny, some of these guys can't drink wine yet. So when you can, enjoy it with some lamb. How's that sound? But Isabel was asking, just like in terms of some of the different breeds that you worked with, which ones were some of the more challenging from a behavioral standpoint? And I know there's breed to breed differences. And so for you guys, which ones were some of the biggest challenges and which ones have been the easiest to work with?
Yeah, they all have their idiosyncrasies, I guess, as do the sheep herders. But one of the ones that can be a bit of a problem are the ones that have been domesticated to the point where they are totally social animals with each other. For example, when my youngest son first got Rambouillets, we went up into northeastern California and he traded his Suffolk flock for a flock of Rambouillets. We brought them home and put them in an acre field with water at one end. And in about 3 days, we found that they had never drank water. They were so afraid and so bunched together in the flocking instinct that if one of them didn't go, none of them were going to go. And so we finally had to take them over and show them the water. So that was just an example of some differences there. Now, there are other breeds, depending on what your management is like, that you may or may not want to have that flocking instinct. Some, if you're under fenced conditions, you might want them to spread out better and make better use of the property. If you're herding them, herding instinct is really important. And so those are some of the things. We found that the Dorsets were independent cusses, and they would go off and do their own thing. No doubt about it. We find that there are some breeds that are naturally flighty. For example, the Barbados that I mentioned we had were kind of like domestic deer. They could jump tall fences or anything else that you put them in contact with. When we sold ours, we sold them to a lady up Butte Creek Canyon. And the next night on the local news, there was a picture of this wild ram on a cliff in Butte Creek Canyon. Well, that's not a wild ram. That's Freddie. That's our ram. We recognize him, but she didn't have very good fences, and they tended to take off on their own. Now, Selena, you know that we have two kinds of Dorper sheep right now. The white Dorpers, which are a very mellow breed and easy to handle. And we have the Dorpers, which are the black-headed ones. And we find that they are squirrely by and large. And when it comes time to work them in a corral, they tend to go nuts sometimes. Now, not all of them on that breed are that way, so I don't want to give a bad name to them because there are some people that spend more time with them than we do, and they're like puppy dogs, but ours are not. So there are some differences as far as the breeds are concerned.
Yes, and also in terms of management and style, because we've got some sheep donated in, and there's one gentleman who's a dear friend of both of ours. His sheep, we can see them coming a mile away. They see us coming a mile away, and they like to jump out of everything, and they're Suffolk-y based sheep. And but definitely the breed does have a play. Our South Downs, it is too much work for them to try to run away. They just are like, oh, that's too much. We can't do that. Whereas our black-faced sheep, they're like, yeah, we can take off. Josie is teasing us that we need the goats back. And I was saying our fences cannot take it. The last straw when we did have the goats at Chico State, and Wes was instrumental in getting us the goats and also helping me guide through our unit can't handle them. There is a doe standing on the brand new woven wire fence. I don't know how they get their four little feet on a fence, jumping on it, making a trampoline to get into the tree. And there's belly deep grass and clover all around them. And so we are still fixing fences from when we had the goats 5, 6, 7 years ago. And we're still repairing some of those fences. So, Josie, I like that. I'll help with the fences. We're still fixing the dang fences. That's hilarious. But we're kind of starting to wrap up on time a little bit, Wes. And so 2 last questions super quick. one, what is your favorite part about raising sheep? And two, if you had to give advice to this group of students about getting involved in the industry, what would that be?
Okay, yeah. I think my favorite part of being in the sheep business is meeting the people that I've gotten to meet around the country, around the world. We actually spent some time in Australia, New Zealand, and we spent some time in England and Wales and Scotland. And the meeting the people and comparing notes with them, I think is really the best part of it. And of course, the next crop of lambs is the thing we're always looking for. We bought a new ram this spring, and we're really anxious to see the lambs next week. Now, they all turn out three-legged with one eye. It's not going to be too good. But if they turn out the way we think they're going to, that's going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to that. I also think that one of the favorite parts I have is the genetic progress that we're able to see when you're breeding animals, and whether or not you made the right choice in buying that ram, or whether you made the right choice in culling that ewe for whatever reason. I think that's one of the other things that's really important. And I'm always looking for the next thing in the sheep industry. And I heard you say some of these students are probably going to be veterinarians. And I think that one of the things that you're going to have to be thinking about is the fact that you're not going to be dispensing as much medication as the vets used to. You're going to be looking at genomics, and you're going to be setting up programs for your clients that will deal with the genomics so that we can head off some of the disease problems, some of the things that we have to manage around at this point with medications. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a part of your program with your clients to do that. So, those are some of the things that I like best. And as far as what are you going to do, I think that you need to get involved with somebody that's doing it now. And you're going to learn two things. You're going to learn, first of all, this is the way it should be done for this part of it. And this is the thing that you never want to do for this part of it. Because not everybody, I don't know anyone that has a perfect program. I'll just say that. And you can learn from both sides of the fence as far as something to make you better, make you more efficient at what you're doing, and help you enjoy raising sheep.
I appreciate that, Liz, because that is so true. In terms of duct tape, baling wire, WD-40 still holds together some of the best operations that I've seen. And it's just, that they don't read the textbook. Sheep and goats do not read a textbook. They don't know how they're supposed to behave. They will take anything that you think you know and make you realize, okay, so this is different this year, this go around, whatever the case may be. And I really appreciate the meeting the people. And I think because the sheep industry has a great group of people. And I was able to go to Australia a couple of years ago and visit my cousin that they run sheep over there, and go to the Hamilton sale yards, and got to go tour some different operations and meet and visit and see how things are different and how things are the same. I now have a life goal to go to Sheepvention. Did you know there's a Sheepvention in Melbourne, Australia, that's literally all sheep equipment? It's like Tulare Farm Show, but for sheep only. Yeah. So I have a standing invite to go to that one. So that's kind of a dream there. But does anybody have any last minute questions for Wes? You can feel free to unmute, or do you get a little bit of perspective? I have to totally agree. Lambing season's probably my favorite because it's like opening Christmas presents and seeing what worked and what didn't work, because you will have both of those. And I hope to get these guys involved in our fall lambing.
There you go. Well, and if everything ever turns loose, you're all welcome to come to the ranch and see us here.
As soon as we get clearer guidelines, we may see if we can set up some tours, because I'd sure like to get this group down to Superior come out to see you guys. That would be fun.
That would
So
be great.
if we don't have any questions, let's go ahead and wrap up. Let's thank Wes. Appreciate it. Appreciate his time and always his insight on things.